Hello, my dear sleepy listener. Tonight, you'll journey through soft sands and golden tales, drifting into a time when caravans walked across the desert like ghostly ships, and gold glittered not in vaults, but in quiet hands. You're about to wander through the Ghana kingdom, a world where trade was sacred, silence was language, and wealth whispered through the trees. Before you drift away into peaceful slumber, please take a moment to like this video, leave a gentle comment about your favorite historical moment, and subscribe to keep these soothing tales coming your way. And if you feel like it, tell us where you're listening from, your city and time zone. We'd love to imagine the world falling asleep together. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let these gentle whispers of history lull you into sleep. You awaken in the Sahel. The morning sun brushes gently across tall grasses, golden light filtering through thorny acacias. The air is dry but cool, and the breeze carries the soft thudding sound of hooves on packed earth. Camels, tall and strange, move like shadows across the land, traders arriving at the edge of a world both known and mysterious. It is the year 700, or perhaps a little later, and you are near the earliest stirrings of what will become the Ghana kingdom. Not Ghana as known today, but an empire older and grander, tucked into the elbow of West Africa where the grassland kisses the desert. This is the land of Wagadou. You walk alongside a small band of herders, silent men with cloth draped over their heads and eyes narrowed from sun and sand. They gesture politely toward the horizon where smoke rises in soft spirals. A village, perhaps a town, or the edge of something greater. You follow them without question. It feels natural, here, to move with the wind. As you draw near, you find not a city of walls, but a tapestry of life unfolding across open plains. Round mud homes curve into the earth, their surfaces painted in soft ochres and earth tones. Children chase goats around cooking fires, and elders sit beneath low trees, speaking in languages that rise and fall like river tides. You can't understand every word, but you understand the rhythm. It feels old. It feels right. You hear a story whispered from one of the elders about a man named Maghan, the Lord of Gold, a king whose touch brought order and whose voice carried weight enough to settle disputes and bless the rains. Whether he existed as one man or many kings remembered as one, no one here seems to mind. The story is what matters, the golden thread that stitches memory into place. The people here call this place Wagadou, though outside travellers, Arab chroniclers, will later name it Ghana, after its title for king. A curious reversal, a place named for the one who ruled it, not the other way around. You sit beneath a baobab tree, listening to the sounds of a distant drum, steady, slow, unhurried, like a heartbeat underground. And here, in the stillness, you sense something vast, a kingdom not yet fully formed, but already dreaming itself into being. Quirky, too, is the tale of how gold was sometimes kept not only in nuggets or dust, but bound into the manes of royal horses, a myth, perhaps, or a poetic exaggeration. Yet it tells you something about how deeply gold ran, not just in the rivers, but in the imagination. Historians still puzzle over exactly when the Ghana kingdom began. Was it truly by 700 Dons? Some say later. Some argue the very idea of a central empire might be too neat, too tidy for such a complex web of towns, clans and trade routes. But here, tonight, in this dream of golden grass and slow dawn, the questions do not trouble you. You lie back in the grass, watching birds wheel above. This is a land of beginnings, of whispers and footpaths and untold riches waiting beneath the soil. Tomorrow, the traders will arrive, but tonight, you rest. You awaken with the gentle warmth of morning sun on your cheek, the golden light of the Sahel slowly rising over a landscape that stretches endlessly. Today, you arrive at the heart of something remarkable, a city split in two, and yet bound by something deeper than walls. The city of Kumbi Saleh awaits. You walk along a dusty path shaded by the drooping leaves of acacia trees. The scent of wood smoke and millet porridge hangs gently in the air, wafting from scattered hearths across the plain. The town you're entering isn't encircled by stone, nor does it rise abruptly from the earth. Instead, it spreads out with a quiet dignity, its neighborhoods unfolding like brushstrokes across the savannah. Kumbi Saleh is no ordinary town. It is, in truth, two towns, one for the ruler and his court, the other for the traders, merchants, and Muslim scholars who journey here from as far as Morocco, Ifriqiya, and beyond. You pause at the edge of the first district. It hums with the life of the marketplace. Donkey carts groaning under weight, leather-bound scrolls peeking from satchels, and brightly woven cloths fluttering in the wind like birds mid-flight. Here, in the merchant's town, Arabic is spoken in low voices. Prayers rise with the sun, and the smell of dates, incense, and salt thickens the air. You pass a group of scholars seated on goatskins beneath a thatched roof, discussing the teachings of Al-Kindi or Al-Farabi, though they may never have met those names in person. Knowledge is portable here. It walks in sandals and is written in dust. You cross a stretch of open land, a kind of no-man's savannah, to reach the other half of Kumbi Saleh, the king's city. There's no grand gate to enter, just a subtle shift in tone. The homes are larger, painted with red and black earth pigments. Men in white robes sit on carved stools beneath shaded verandas. You can feel the rhythm of power here, even though the drums are still and the voices low. At the heart of this royal city stands a palace, not a stone castle, but a complex of richly decorated halls and storage houses. Gold glints in the sunlight not as coins, but as dust stored in gourd containers and as ornaments sewn onto garments. The king, whom some outsiders call the Ghana, is a figure of controlled grandeur. You glimpse him briefly, seated beneath a silk canopy, draped in a robe woven with imported silks and local cotton, surrounded by guards wielding spears tipped with gleaming iron. One of the king's attendants explains something to you in a slow, melodic cadence that this dual city functions like the beating of two hearts in one body. One heart trades, the other rules. Both are needed. It's a system that fascinates later historians. Some wonder if the separation was out of religious courtesy. The Muslim traders allowed their quarter while the king, still holding fast to older indigenous beliefs, maintained his own traditions separately. Others think it may have been more logistical, a way to manage sanitation, noise, and space. Or perhaps it was symbolic, two mirrors reflecting each other, one spiritual, one temporal. As you walk the narrow lanes, a strange and endearing sight catches your eye. A merchant has trained a small monkey to fan him with palm fronds as he takes his afternoon rest. Locals pass the scene with amusement, a reminder that even in golden kingdoms, life includes a little whimsy. By dusk, the marketplace swells again. Drums return, rhythmic and full. You wander through the crowds as lamps flicker into light. soft flames dancing in calabash bowls. A woman presses a sweet cake of honey and millet into your hand, her smile framed by intricate beads. No words are needed. You return to the gentle borderland between the two towns, lying down beneath the wide open stars. Overhead, constellations wheel slowly, the same ones travelers have followed for generations. And as sleep comes again, you wonder, was this dual city a marvel of urban planning, a cultural compromise, or simply how harmony looks when built with clay, gold, and trust? You don't need an answer now. The stars will keep their secrets a little longer. You awaken to stillness, not silence, but a breathless kind of quiet, a quiet full of meaning. In the early light, you find yourself sitting at the edge of a grove, watching two trading groups approach from opposite directions. Neither speaks, no words are exchanged, and yet a deal is about to be made, a trade older than the written word, wrapped in mystery and silence. This is the famous silent barter of the Ghana kingdom, a ritual of trade where gold and salt pass hands without voice or vow. You remain utterly still, sensing the sacredness of the moment. To outsiders, this custom is baffling, but here, in the thick of it, it feels as natural as the breeze. One group, Berber traders from the north, approaches with salt, precious blocks carved from desert mines. They place their goods upon a large flat stone near the riverbank, step back, and retreat behind the scrub trees. The second group, locals from the Ghanaian side, approaches, eyes alert but calm. They inspect the salt and, wordlessly, lay down gold dust beside it. Then they too withdraw. The scene plays out like a ritual dance. The Berbers return, evaluate the gold. If they are satisfied, they take it. If not, they leave it and wait. Sometimes this goes back and forth for hours or even days. No one speaks, no one threatens. Trade here is as much performance as transaction. This practice baffles historians even today. Was it rooted in mutual respect? Was it an avoidance of conflict due to language barriers, or perhaps a sacred belief that speaking during trade might somehow taint the purity of exchange? Some scholars believe it began long before the Ghana kingdom itself, passed down from even older trade cultures, but the Ghana kings refined it, formalized it, even taxed it. Indeed, not far from where you sit, a collector waits quietly, ready to claim the king's due. Every handful of gold dust exchanged in this silent ritual yields a tax for the crown. The Ghana kings didn't mine most of the gold themselves, they simply controlled its flow, like a river dammed just enough to benefit all downstream. As the sun rises higher, the scene gradually dissolves. The traders depart in opposite directions, never having spoken, but goods have changed hands, value has been agreed upon, and peace holds. You walk away slowly, replaying what you've seen. A barter without bargains, a contract without paper. Somehow it works. Later, under the shade of a palm leaf shelter, the griot tells you a curious tale, that the silence of the trade wasn't just courtesy, it was enchantment, that speaking during such an exchange would invite misfortune. He insists, quite seriously, that once, long ago, a trader tried to haggle aloud, and the earth swallowed his goods whole. The others around him simply nod. Whether or not it happened doesn't seem to matter. The lesson is what lingers. At dusk, you wander through the remnants of a temporary trade camp. Scraps of dyed cloth rustle in the wind, and a small wooden idol, left perhaps as thanks or protection, stands vigil over an empty fire pit. A pair of ostrich feathers drift lazily in the air. Even here, in the detritus of trade, you feel the hush that comes after ritual, the kind that stays in your bones. And so, you lie down once more beneath the stars, warmed by the fading heat of the desert day, cooled by the whispering wind. The fireflies blink slowly at the edge of your vision, and your thoughts drift back to the stillness between buyers and sellers, a silence more powerful than any voice. Historians continue to question just how widespread this silent trade truly was. Was it romanticized by chroniclers? Did it happen only in select regions or under specific conditions? The records, like the traders, are quiet, but the silence, that stays with you. Sleep presses in gently now, like warm sand wrapping around your toes. The stars do not speak, and neither do you. You awaken beneath a vast silk canopy. The sun is already high, but the air within the royal enclosure remains cool, filtered through fine mats and shaded walkways. You are in the court of the Ghana king, the Maghan, the Lord of Gold, and the very earth beneath you seems to hum with restrained splendor. All around you, movement is slow and deliberate. Servants pass quietly, bare feet muffled against red clay. Ostrich feathers flutter from fans held aloft by stoic attendants. The king does not sit upon a golden throne, not exactly. Instead, he reclines on an elevated dais, robed in indigo-dyed cloth threaded with gold, his wrists heavy with metal rings, his neck adorned with beads as polished stones. His skin glows in the light, not from oil, but from the presence of wealth too old to count. Beside him, in near reverence, stand his advisors and judges, men chosen for their wisdom, calm speech, and sometimes for the peculiar gift of memory. Here, disputes are settled with deliberation, and even the smallest village grievance is heard with solemn attention. You're told that the king never speaks directly to commoners. Words pass through an interpreter, adding distance and mystique to the man who rules this golden land. And then you see them two elephants tethered to the far edge of the court. Not wild, but not entirely tame either. They sway slowly, their ears flapping like sails, their tusks wrapped in thin leather to prevent damage. They are symbols, not beasts of burden, reminders of strength, of reach, and of a kingdom that stretches far beyond this courtyard. Some say these elephants were given as tribute. Others whisper they appeared on their own, drawn to the aura of the Maghan. Closer still, you spot royal hounds, lean, tall, alert. These are not lapdogs or pets. They are trained guardians, said to recognize enemy bloodlines on scent alone. The king, it is said, trusts them more than men. There is a rhythm to the court's movement, though you can't quite find its beat. Some say it runs on lunar cycles, with special audiences held during certain moon phases. Others suggest the schedule is determined by the king's dreams, interpreted by court priests who blend astronomy with divination. You are ushered quietly to a side pavilion where tribute from neighbouring chiefs is being displayed. Rolls of cotton, slabs of salt, bundles of dried fish, and, of course, gold. Always gold. But also curious offerings: a carved flute shaped like a crocodile, a feather fan from a bird no one can name, and a painting made entirely from crushed seeds. Tribute is not only about value, it is about imagination. And still, historians wonder how much of this was real, and how much magnified by the pens of Arab chroniclers. One writer, al-Bakri, described the court in such vivid detail that modern scholars have questioned whether he saw it with his own eyes or compiled reports passed along from trader to trader. Did the elephants roam the court daily? Did the king's robes truly shimmer like flame? Perhaps, perhaps not. But the story was golden, and so it stayed. You watch as a judge settles a land dispute between two cousins. There are no raised voices, only careful testimony, witnessed by elders and confirmed by men holding iron staffs, tokens of their office. A decision is made. Both parties bow. A crier repeats the judgment aloud, ensuring all in the court will carry it outward like ripples in a pond. One quirky ritual catches your attention each time someone approaches the king. They toss dust over their heads, not to curse themselves, but to show humility, to become small in the presence of greatness. The effect is strange and lovely, like watching people vanish and return in an instant. As the sun lowers, the court empties. The king retreats into the innermost compound, said to contain chambers no outsider has seen. You lie again beneath the canopy, the day's warmth settling into your bones. Around you, the last whispers of judgment, tribute, and ceremony fade into the hush of evening. And you wonder, in this court of gold and silence, where elephants roam and dust marks respect, did power mean control or harmony? Was the king a ruler, or simply the stillest point in a swirling world? These questions, like so many in this land, ask to be felt rather than answered. You close your eyes beneath a rising moon, and the royal drums begin again, not for war but for memory. You awaken to the gentle clang of metal, not harsh or jarring, but rhythmic and almost melodic. The sound seems to pulse from the ground, as if the earth itself is forging something deep beneath the surface. You follow the resonance, winding through a small village on the kingdom's fringe until you reach a clearing filled with firelight and iron. This is the domain of the blacksmiths, quiet artisans cloaked in smoke and tradition. Here, in this corner of the Ghana kingdom, metal is not simply forged, it is summoned. You approach a forge, the air thick with heat. Sparks leap like fireflies as a smith hammers molten iron on a stone anvil. His arms are strong, but his movements are measured, almost reverent. Around him, young apprentices watch closely, mimicking his rhythm with sticks in the sand. This is more than a workshop. It is a sanctuary. Blacksmiths in this world are not just tradesmen. They are held apart, even venerated, sometimes feared. Across many Sahelian societies, they belong to a caste of their own, believed to possess esoteric knowledge, perhaps even supernatural control over fire and earth. To bend metal, after all, is to change nature itself, and that requires more than muscle. You're told that newborn child's first blade, a tiny ceremonial knife, is made not by a merchant, nor a noble, but by a blacksmith who murmurs blessings between hammer strikes. That same smith may later forge the spears that guard the king, the ploughshares that till the fields, and the bells that call people to prayer. Power, protection, and provision all flow through this quiet forge. One elderly smith offers you a glance at something peculiar, a blade so old, its iron shines like polished bone. He says it came from a meteorite, though others claim it was mined from a mountain that no longer exists. The truth is buried in ash and legend. Still, you run your fingers gently over the edge. It's warm, impossibly smooth. Nearby, a woman shapes thin iron rods into jewelry. her tools delicate, her touch as soft as weaving. You hadn't realized blacksmithing could be so graceful. She tells you her mother taught her, and her daughter is already learning. Some of these families, it seems, have passed down secrets for centuries, and yet scholars debate whether these smiths truly formed a guild or caste across the Ghana kingdom, or whether these beliefs were more regional, stronger in some areas than others. Archaeological traces suggest ironworking was widespread, but its spiritual significance may have been localized, shifting with every town and tree. Oral traditions, like smoke, are hard to bottle. One strange little moment catches you off guard. A boy offers you a small carved figure, a blacksmith with outstretched hands, his body exaggerated and comical. It's a toy, clearly, but also a charm. The child insists it will bring good nails and strong fences. You laugh quietly and tuck it into your pouch. As the sun falls behind the forge, the work slows. Tools are cooled, embers covered. The smiths do not speak of their methods openly. Even now, as twilight deepens, there is a sense that some secrets live in the coals, not the tongue. You lie down near the forge, the air still warm from the day's labour. The sky glows with stars, as if the heavens themselves have begun to spark. You think about fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that creates, that shapes, that transforms. And in that flickering moment between waking and sleep, you wonder, was the Ghana kingdom built on gold or iron? The hammer sounds again, once, in the distance, and you drift, like smoke, into dreams. You awaken in the early grey hush before dawn, following a winding footpath that leads you toward the heart of the capital. Not the palace this time, but something quieter, almost mythic. The sun has not yet risen, and already the people are stirring. Women walk in pairs with gourds balanced expertly on their heads. Children, still sleepy-eyed, gather at the edge of the square. They're all heading toward the same place, the well that never runs dry. You reach it just as the light softens the horizon. It doesn't look like much at first, just a stone-rimmed circle set into the earth, surrounded by smooth mud walls and shaded by tall shea trees. But the air around it is hushed, even reverent. You step closer and peer down. The water is cool, deep, and impossibly clear. This is no ordinary well. It's whispered, softly, always softly, that this well has never failed. Even in seasons of brutal drought, when the grass is dyed and the dust storms swept through villages like ghosts, the water here continued to rise. People come from miles around, carrying hollowed-out calabashes and clay jars. Some bring offerings, cola nuts, feathers, small coins left neatly beside the base. An elder tells you a story while she waits her turn. Long ago, she says, the well was a gift from a spirit who lived beneath the earth. One night, the spirit visited a lonely traveller and said, "Dig where the moon meets the baobab." And so the traveller dug and found water that never left. You smile at the charm of it, but you wonder, could there be truth beneath the tale? Some modern historians and geologists have speculated that certain Ghanaian wells might have been fed by natural springs or underground rivers. Others suggest clever engineering, perhaps unseen stone linings or redirection of runoff. But the exact mechanics, like the well itself, remain mysterious. You sip from a communal cup. The water is cold, mineral-rich, and strangely sweet. Beside you, a group of women kneel to wash clothing, rhythmically pounding it against flat stones. Their laughter rings out across the square, light and steady, like music in the morning air. You notice something subtle and touching. One woman draws a symbol in the dust beside her, a spiral with 4 tiny dots around it. A blessing, maybe, a prayer, or just a doodle left behind while she waits. As the sun rises higher, the square fills with life. Merchants set up baskets of smoked fish, bundles of onions, and pots of porridge. Children chase each other through the legs of patient donkeys. The well becomes a centre not just of water, but of rhythm, the pulse of daily life. You hear a curious claim whispered between 2 old men that when the Ghana king dies, the well level drops by a hand's width. They say it's how the land mourns, not with words, but with water. Whether it's poetic metaphor or long-standing superstition, no one argues. A few chroniclers from the Islamic world mention these wells in their writings, but inconsistently. Al-Bakri's famous accounts focus more on palaces and markets. Perhaps like many sacred local customs, this one escaped their gaze. Or perhaps it was kept hidden, protected by silence, like so much in this land. By midday, the crowds thin out. The well stands alone again, quiet and full. You sit beneath a neem tree and listen to the insects buzz, the breeze rustle the leaves, and the low hum of distant drums echoing from the palace. You think of water, of silence, of blessings given by the earth and accepted with grace. You think of a well that has never run dry, and how, in a kingdom famous for gold, it is the invisible treasures that truly endure. And as you lay your head against the sun-warmed ground, a gentle drop of water echoes from the well, one drop, then another, like a heartbeat in stone. You awaken beneath a canopy of woven reeds, stretched over a shaded courtyard that smells of parchment, incense, and distant dunes. The breeze carries with it a faint dusty coolness, a reminder that not far north lies the Sahara, and beyond it, another world. But here, in the Ghana kingdom, you find the 2 worlds converging, in the persons of robed visitors, ink-stained scrolls, and quiet prayers whispered at sunrise. You are among Muslim merchants now. They've arrived from the cities of North Africa, from Sijil Massa, Odegost, and even far-off Kairouan, drawn by the promise of gold, of course, but also by the rhythm of exchange, the possibility of belonging. And many have stayed, setting up homes in Kumbi Saleh's merchant quarter, building mosques with mud brick minarets that tilt gently toward the sky, and establishing schools where boys learn by candlelight. You walk among them, welcomed with calm nods and open palms. In one home, a scribe dips his reed pen into black ink and writes carefully on a page of rough parchment. The script flows from right to left, curving and looping, Arabic letters like waves in the sand. He's copying a verse from the Quran, but beside it, on another sheet, are records of salt prices and camel counts. In the next room, 2 traders argue in low voices over a shipment of copper. Neither raises his tone. They pause only when the call to prayer echoes faintly from a nearby roof. Both rise, turn to face east, and begin to pray. The dispute will resume later, respectfully, with dates and tea. These merchants bring more than goods. They carry stories of faraway lands, of caliphs and scholars, of libraries larger than cities. Some also carry books, fragile bundles of knowledge wrapped in cloth and tied with leather straps. One such scroll is unrolled for you by a teacher in a shaded madrasa. Its pages contain a treatise on astronomy, phases of the moon, names of stars, diagrams of eclipses. You listen as he recites in Arabic, then pauses to translate into Soninka. His voice is soft, melodic. This blend of languages, this layering of thought, it is not fusion, but harmony. And yet, beneath this peaceful exchange lies a gentle tension. The kings of Ghana, at this point in history, are not Muslim themselves. They honour their ancestral beliefs, make sacrifices to local spirits, and hold fast to rituals rooted in centuries past. The Muslim traders, for their part, are free to practice their faith, build mosques, and travel unharmed, but the two worlds remain respectfully separate. Some historians believe the king maintained Muslim advisors, especially for foreign diplomacy. Others question this, pointing out that Arabic sources may have overemphasized the Islamic presence to reflect their own priorities. Was the king sympathetic to Islam, curious about it, or simply pragmatic in welcoming its merchants? There is, as always, no single answer. The records, written mostly by outsiders, reflect only fragments. The truth likely lies in the quiet spaces in between. You visit a mosque in the merchant quarter at twilight. Its minaret is simple but elegant, carved with patterns of repeating stars. A young boy leads a call to prayer, his voice thin but clear, like wind through palm leaves. Nearby, his sister reads from a wooden tablet etched with ink and charcoal, carefully sounding out each word. One old trader invites you to tea, and between sips of mint-scented brew, he shows you something unexpected, a scrap of parchment with a poem written not in Arabic, but in his native Berber tongue. For memory, he says with a wink, not all learning comes from the market. As you step back into the evening air, the stars emerge, bold and bright. Traders lie in hammocks or sit on rooftops, speaking in many languages but sharing one silence. Overhead, the Milky Way glimmers like spilled salt across a black cloth, and you lie down among them, head resting on folded cloth, the scent of incense lingering in your nostrils. You wonder how many of these scrolls will survive the centuries, how many of these names, these voices, these humble schools will echo into our modern libraries. Some, yes, others, only in whispers. But tonight, they are here, real, breathing, learning by lamplight. You awaken to the soft hum of morning commerce, not shouting, not chaos, but a flowing, pulsing sound, like the tide of a great human sea. You're standing at the threshold of a market square, the air thick with the scents of shea butter, fermented grains, and roasted ground nuts. And here, moving through the crowd with ease and purpose, are the women of Ghana. They are not tucked in shadows or lingering on the edges. They are everywhere, bartering, directing, assessing cloth with practiced fingers, stacking gourds with geometric precision, and making decisions that ripple across families and villages. You realize, quite quickly, that the Ghana kingdom's economic rhythm beats with many hands, and not all of them are men's. You follow a woman named Ndai as she moves gracefully through the stalls. Her wrap cloth is boldly patterned in reds and browns, her hair woven with care and pride. She stops to weigh dried fish, checks the price of the bolt of cotton, then negotiates with the salt trader using gestures, glances, and a series of clipped phrases. No haggling, no shouting, just the precision of someone who's been raised in the current of commerce, Di explains, with a quiet chuckle, that she owns 3 storage huts, 2 donkeys, and a share in a long-distance trade caravan bound for Gao. Her husband tends goats. He's patient, she says with a wink. Indeed. Records and oral traditions suggest that women in the Ghana kingdom held considerable economic power. They ran markets, managed property, and even passed inheritance through matrilineal lines in certain clans. A woman's role was not confined to the household. She might be the head of it, or its anchor, nearby. A group of older women sits beneath a neem tree, grinding millet into flour while recounting family stories. One pauses to scold a boy racing through the square, then smiles and resumes. You watch them work in rhythm, 3 generations in motion, and wonder how many economies across the world ran, silently and powerfully, on this same invisible labour. You pause at a small shrine tucked between 2 vendor stalls, a clay figure of a mother holding a bowl. Someone has placed a fresh calabash of water beside it, and Dai tells you it's a protective spirit, one that watches over trade, health, and fertility. People still pray to her when starting a new venture. The market itself is alive with quirks. A small monkey steals a strip of dried mango and scampers across a roof, causing brief uproar. A vendor selling blue dye insists, in all seriousness, that his cloth cools the body better than shade. A musician plays a hand-carved balafon near the edge of the crowd, gently chanting praise songs for passing traders in hopes of earning a coin or two. Yet, beneath the liveliness, you notice something deeper, an embedded respect. No one interrupts the older women. No one questions the decisions of the market heads, most of whom are female. This isn't novelty, it's custom. Still, scholars debate how far this influence stretched. While it's clear women shaped much of the economic fabric of Ghanaian towns, did they hold political sway as well? Some oral histories hint at female councillors, even warrior leaders in earlier generations. But the written records, largely composed by foreign male chroniclers, are frustratingly silent on this point. You wonder how many names were never written down. How many queens of commerce went unnamed in the scrolls as the sun climbs higher. Nadai invites you to a midday meal in the shade. She shares spicy stew over millet and tells you how her grandmother once rode with a caravan for 10 days straight. A woman who refused to marry until she owned her own herd. You smile and eat slowly, letting the flavours and the stories linger. Later, as the market quiets for the afternoon heat, you stretch out beneath the same neem tree where the older women worked. The earth is warm, the breeze gentle. The rhythmic beat of a distant drum filters in from the hills. You close your eyes and think of Ndai's firm footsteps, the sacred clay shrine, and the unbroken thread of women's hands, weaving, trading, building. No monuments were needed. The marketplace was monument enough. You awaken to the muffled jingle of camel bells. The air is dry and sharp, tinged with the musky scent of beasts and leather. You're standing at the outer edge of a caravan route, a sandy junction, where long lines of traders pause before entering the capital. And here, waiting for them, are the tax collectors of the Ghana kingdom. You watch as one of them, a tall man in indigo robes and a conical leather hat, strides forward with a wooden staff. He's not aggressive, but there is no mistaking his authority. Each caravan must stop. Each bundle must be counted, and each load of salt, gold, or cloth must be taxed before the goods can proceed. This is how the Ghana kings built their wealth, not through conquest, but through meticulous control of trade. Every camel that passed through these lands added a few dust motes of gold to the royal coffers. And when you multiply that by the hundreds, by the thousands, you begin to see how silent gold turned into silent power. You're handed a tablet of hardened clay, etched with simple pictographs. It's a record of a passing caravan's goods, 30 blocks of salt, 5 bundles of textiles, 12 jars of oil. A clerk nearby translates it aloud, nodding as he does. Literacy here takes many forms, and even those who cannot write know how to read the rhythms of trade. A boy runs forward to inspect the camel's saddlebags. He pokes gently at each one, checking for concealed gold dust. A common trick, you're told, where smugglers might stash treasure inside a gourd of grain. But this caravan seems clean. The boy earns a coin and grins. And then something amusing happens. A camel sneezes loudly, startling a goat tethered nearby, which bolts through the checkpoint and knocks over a pot of ink. The clerk sighs, the guard laughs, and someone remarks, "Even the animals pay tolls today." You stroll alongside the collectors as they process more caravans. The system appears precise, but not inflexible. A trader who brings a rare item, bright blue stones from a distant riverbed, is allowed to barter for a reduced tax. Another, who arrives late and dusty, must wait until the officials have rested. It's bureaucracy, yes, but also negotiation, a human rhythm beneath the ledgers. And while the organisation seems impressive, scholars still wonder how standardised it truly was. Did all towns along the Ghanaian frontier apply taxes the same way? Were collectors salaried, or did they keep a portion of the goods? Some suggest the system may have been more fluid than we imagine, more like a conversation than a codebook. The physical evidence is fragmentary. Clay seals, scattered inscriptions, vague references in Arabic sources. The rest, like the caravan dust, has long since blown away. Still, you're amazed at how deeply embedded this practice is in daily life. Even a group of women walking with firewood on their heads nod to the collectors, offering up a small tribute of dried herbs, not mandatory, but appreciated. An exchange of goodwill as much as wealth. You sit beneath a thorn tree as the sun climbs higher, watching the great animal trains shift and sway in the light. Each camel steps carefully, as though aware of the preciousness of its cargo. Bells jingle, children wave, coins clink into bowls. And somewhere behind it all, invisible but undeniable, you feel the presence of the king, not in the form of a shout or a decree, but in the gentle tug of toll and tribute, a quiet hand guiding a golden current. As the line of traders moves on toward the capital, you notice a small chalk mark on the lead camel's flank, a symbol that indicates it has passed inspection. It's simple, efficient, easy to wipe away after arrival. You smile. Even in this ancient empire, bureaucracy had its charm. And as you lay back against the roots of the thorn tree, the earth vibrating faintly from the passing hooves, you feel a strange kind of peace. A peace built not on conquest, but on rhythm, on counting, on trust. And in the spaces between gold and salt, between toll and trade, you drift once more into sleep. You awaken to the rich smell of millet and honey wafting through the dusk. The sun has dipped below the savannah horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the thatched rooftops of Kumbi Saleh. Laughter rises like embers from a great fire, and music floats on the breeze, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the stars. Tonight, you are a guest at a royal feast, not within the palace walls, but in the open air, beneath the wide sky. This is no formal banquet of polished stone and goblets. This is something more intimate, more human. The Ghana kingdom is celebrating, and everyone, it seems, has brought a bowl, an instrument, or a story to share. You settle onto a woven mat beside a flickering fire, surrounded by dancers, drummers, storytellers, and strangers who greet you with easy smiles. A young boy hands you a clay bowl filled with spicy groundnut stew. The broth is rich, smoky, and thickened with something slightly sweet. As you eat, a girl drapes a necklace of dried orange peel around your neck. A charm for good digestion, she says, giggling. The music begins slowly. A balafon, a wooden xylophone, clicks and chirps like birds at dawn. Then hand drums join, soft and low. The rhythm builds gradually, hypnotically, like waves pulling you deeper into memory. And then comes the voice, a griot, wrapped in layers of indigo-dyed cloth, begins to chant. His words rise and fall in the Soninka tongue, telling the story of Dinga, the semi-mythical founder of the Ghana royal line. The tale flows like honey and fire of a divine father from the east, of magic wells, talking snakes, and a child born beneath a tree that never died. Truth and legend blend freely here. You do not need to separate them. Everyone leans in. Even the youngest children fall silent. This is not performance. It is inheritance. The griot continues tales of Kaya Maghan's justice, of battles averted by wisdom, of marriages brokered by drum beats across hills. At one point, he pauses and raises a finger. And then the sky blinked, he says, and the camels arrived. The crowd laughs. You're not entirely sure why. Perhaps it's a local joke, or perhaps it's the way he says it, with that perfect blend of gravity and play. Humour, after all, can be just as sacred as history. As the story winds on, someone passes you a fermented beverage made from sorghum. It's strong, tart, and strangely comforting. You sip slowly, watching the dancers weave their way between the fires, their shadows stretching like painted lines across the ground. And amid the dancing, a curious tradition unfolds the praise game. Individuals stand one by one to offer a brief, exaggerated compliment to someone else. A child calls her grandmother as wise as 7 crocodiles. A man declares that his neighbour's stew could charm a wild lion. A woman proclaims her sister's voice could make the moon dance. It's absurd, warm, and deeply affectionate. Some historians wonder whether this tradition evolved into more formalized praise poetry, the kind recited at royal courts and passed down for generations. Others think it may have always lived in this twilight space, half between laughter and reverence. The feast continues deep into the night. The fires burn low. The drums grow slower. The balafon player begins to hum, almost to himself, and the dancers sit cross-legged and swaying gently. You lie back against a rolled mat and gaze upward. The stars are astonishing here, clear, close, as if pinned carefully to the velvet sky by a patient hand. Someone beside you is softly drumming a rhythm that mimics the sound of walking. Step, step, pause, step, like a memory in motion. And in this moment, you feel the entire kingdom breathing the king in his palace, the traders under woven tents, the smiths beside cold forges, the mothers and their sleeping children, all part of a quiet, ancient harmony. No wealth was counted tonight, no deals struck, and yet it feels like the center of the world. You close your eyes to the sound of a griot's final line, a blessing, murmured in the language of dreams, and you let it carry you away. You awaken to the soft crunch of footsteps on sand and the glint of gold dust floating lazily through the morning air. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but already the light bends in that peculiar way it does in this part of the world, warm and heavy, like syrup poured across the landscape. You find yourself walking along a narrow path between low shrubs and tall termite mounds, following a quiet procession. At its head is a child, no older than 7, cradling a small pouch made of dyed leather. With each step, a trail of golden dust spills behind them, catching in the early light like sunlight crystallized into powder. They're heading to a grove, not a public place, but a sacred one, known only to those who grew up hearing its name whispered at dusk. You follow at a respectful distance, the path bending between crooked trees that grow low and wide, their roots pushing out of the ground like knuckled fingers. The grove is silent, but alive. You can hear birds overhead, insects ticking in the underbrush, and the occasional rustle of something you can't quite see. But it doesn't frighten you. If anything, it feels like the trees are watching and listening. The child kneels near a shrine, a hollow in a tree's base, lined with smooth stones and marked by a feather tucked into a clump of clay. They pour the gold dust gently into the hollow, murmur something too soft to catch, and leave behind a carved bead. Then, without looking back, they walk away. You wait a moment, then approach the tree. Inside the hollow are dozens of offerings, bits of gold. Yes, but also shells, seeds, small carvings of animals and people, fragments of song lyrics etched on slivers of wood. This isn't about wealth. It's about memory, thanks, and hope. Shrines like these, you're told, dot the landscape throughout the Ghana kingdom. They're not temples in the sense an outsider might expect. They have no walls, no altars, no statues, but they are deeply sacred, cared for by families, clans, or sometimes only one person who remembers why the site matters. Each shrine is as unique as the story that surrounds it. One elderly woman tells you her grove protects her family's dreams, literally. We sleep better when the shrine is clean, she says, half smiling, half serious. Another man, a hunter, leaves a bead for every safe return. A midwife brings herbs and millet to the grove where she once saw a light hovering at night. A sign, she insists, of life arriving. There is quiet debate among historians about the function of these sacred groves. Some argue they were tied to specific deities or ancestral spirits, each site a node in a spiritual map stretching across the savannah. Others believe the groves were more localized, perhaps even improvised, places where memory and meaning simply coalesced. And of course, there's always the possibility that outsiders misunderstood entirely. After all, these places don't announce themselves. They aren't marked on maps. They're revealed only through trust. As you walk among the trees, you notice strange details, feathers suspended from threads in midair, bundles of twigs tied with strips of bark, and stones stacked in deliberate little towers. None of it is random. Every gesture here feels intentional, layered, like a language made from shadows and wind. Nearby, someone is singing, softly, in a language with long vowels and few hard edges. You don't understand the words, but you understand the tone. It's a lullaby, not for a child, but for the earth. One quirky tradition still persists in some villages, placing gold dust beneath the tongue before speaking to the shrine. It is believed to make the words more pleasing, more shiny, as they say. Whether this is symbolic or quite literal depends on whom you ask. You spend the rest of the day near the grove, watching the sun filter through branches and turn the dust into stars. The world here feels slower, older, and somehow more precise. Every breeze carries something meaningful. Every step leaves a trace. By nightfall, you return to your sleeping mat just beyond the grove's edge. The child who walked ahead of you in the morning is already asleep, their pouch empty but their smile content. And as you close your eyes, you wonder, what does a kingdom built on gold offer the spirits? Perhaps only this: silence, dust, and the honesty of small offerings in the roots of old trees. You awaken to the sharp scent of iron in the air and the uneasy stillness that settles over a village preparing for uncertainty. Spears are being inspected, arrows fletched in quiet corners, and elders sit in circles murmuring with furrowed brows. You sense it before anyone says it aloud. The Ghana kingdom is under threat. The Soso are rising. You walk among men and women with the taut alertness of those who have heard too many rumours but seen too little proof. Some say the Soso are simply raiders, disorganised and angry. Others speak of a cunning ruler, Sumoro Kante, whose ambitions stretch beyond plunder. In truth, you're not sure what to believe, but change is coming. You can feel it. At a training ground near the edge of the capital, warriors rehearse formations with long-handled blades and short, round shields. They move in unison, not shouting, but exhaling sharply with each motion. One young man hands you a spear and gestures for you to try. It's heavier than you expected, and the balance is strange. You nearly drop it. He grins kindly and shows you how to hold it properly, palm open, pressure forward, feet ready to move. The kingdom has seen conflict before, but this feels different. This is not a border skirmish or a caravan ambush. This feels existential, and yet, even in this moment of tension, there is no panic, only preparation. You find yourself in conversation with a woman who serves as a healer for a small militia unit. She carries charms made of leather and copper. Protection, she says, not just for the body, but for the spirit. Or makes spirits restless, she murmurs, even the ones not yet born. A drum sounds in the distance, not a call to arms, but a message. The rhythm is slow, cautious. It says wait, watch, hold the line. Historians still debate the true extent of the Soso threat to Ghana. Some argue it was exaggerated by later Mali chroniclers seeking to glorify their own rise. Others point to oral traditions that suggest real and devastating battles. The truth, like so many things in this land, likely lives somewhere in between, not a single invasion, but a slow, wearing pressure, like water eroding stone. You hear tales that Sumaro Kante wore human bones as ornaments, that his magic could make arrows vanish in mid-air. These stories are not told with fear, but with a kind of wary awe, as though the man were half real, half storm. A griot recites a fragment of an old song. He drank the sun, spat fire on gold, and dreamed of kingdoms that walked to him. Whether this is prophecy, propaganda, or poetic truth, no one can say. A quirky, almost comic moment breaks the tension. Two boys are caught painting fake scars on their faces, pretending to be Soso warriors in a mock fight. Their father scolds them, half angry, half laughing, and sends them running with smudged cheeks and wooden swords. Even in shadow, life clings to its joys. By twilight, a messenger arrives on horseback, dust-caked and breathless. He speaks privately to a captain, who nods and begins organising watch posts along the riverbank. No one speaks of retreat. The Ghana kingdom is not one to flee. But as you lie under the starlit sky that night, wrapped in a woolen cloth that smells of salt and firewood, you wonder if you're witnessing the beginning of an ending, not dramatic, not sudden, but quiet and slow, like gold dust slipping through fingers. The drums resume again, a different beat this time. It says still here, still strong, and so you close your eyes, cradled not by fear, but by determination. You awaken to the distant rumble of hooves and the unmistakable sound of snorting, stamping, and neighing. But these aren't ordinary horses. These are royal horses, tall, muscular, adorned with beads and coloured cloth, and they stretch in long lines outside the capital, tethered with care in open paddocks beside the palace. Their manes catch the morning light, shimmering faintly with something almost metallic. The Ghana king, it is said, owns over 200 horses. You blink. That can't be right. But here they are, sleek, alert, their nostrils flaring in the cool dawn. Some graze quietly, others twitch their ears at the crows perched on nearby trees. A few paw at the ground as if impatient to run. A stable hand greets you with a nod and invites you to walk the perimeter. Each horse, he says, is named. Some are gifts from foreign kings. Others are born here, raised by hand, trained not only for travel but also for display. In Ghana, horses are symbols, not just of speed, but of command. The king's status, in part, rides on the hooves of these animals. One in particular catches your eye, a deep chestnut stallion draped in a cloth of woven indigo and gold, its saddle too ornate for practical use. Parade horse, the handler explains, only used on feast days, never sweats. You stroke its flank gently, marveling at its composure. The handler chuckles. Even our horses have pride. The presence of so many horses in this semi-arid region is, of course, extraordinary. The Sahel is not a natural homeland for equine herds. Maintaining even a small cavalry requires careful feeding, watering, and attention to disease. Yet the kings of Ghana succeeded, or so the stories say. Some historians believe this number, 200 horses, may have been symbolic, exaggerated by foreign chroniclers like al-Bakri to emphasize the wealth and power of the court. Others argue that such a herd was plausible if distributed across regions or rotated seasonally. Archaeological evidence is sparse, but hints remain: bits of harnesses, hoof-worn paths, and worn iron horse bits uncovered from abandoned sites. The exaggeration, if it was one, may have served a diplomatic purpose. Visitors who saw the king emerge on horseback, flanked by dozens of mounted guards, would have carried home tales of majesty and might, the kind that shaped reputations across deserts. As you continue through the paddocks, you notice a small shrine nestled at the edge of the stables. Someone has left millet, a carved wooden horse, and a silver bell. For the spirit of the herd, the stable hand explains. Every animal has a twin in the spirit world. We feed both. He tells you a curious tale of a horse that once refused to eat until its rider apologized for shouting. Animals don't forget, he says, quite seriously, especially the proud ones. The afternoon sun rises high, casting long shadows of reins and legs across the earth. You sit under an awning where grooms sharpen horseshoes and mix herbal remedies. A boy delivers a drink made from tamarind and honey, cooling and tart. It tastes of resilience. Nearby, two riders perform a mock duel with wooden spears, circling each other in controlled spirals. Each movement is elegant, deliberate. You realize that horsemanship here is as much performance as utility, a blend of dance and discipline, pride and power. Later, as evening falls, the horses are brought in closer, tethered near feed stations filled with softened grain. The air smells of sweat, leather, and old sun. You lie down beside the stable wall, lulled by the low sounds of chewing, the clink of water buckets, and the occasional soft nicker from the shadows. And as sleep draws near, you think of those 200 horses, real or imagined, standing not just as animals, but as symbols of an empire that stretched not only across land, but across legend. You drift off to the faint clatter of hooves in the distance. Maybe dreams are galloping toward you. You awaken to the sound of murmured prayer and the scent of unfamiliar smoke wafting over the low hills. The city is quieter this morning, not stilled by fear, but hushed by uncertainty. Rumours swirl on the wind like sand-veiled warriors from the north, clad in white and bearing the name of Allah, have crossed into Ghanaian lands. They're called the Almoravids. You sit beside a trader from Ardagost who sips spiced tea and shrugs as he repeats the tale. They come for gold, he says, or for God, or both. No one seems quite sure. The Almoravids were a Berber Muslim movement, devout, reformist, and highly disciplined, who had by the mid-11th century swept across the Western Sahara and into North Africa with surprising force. Their aim, some say, was to purify Islam where they believed it had grown too relaxed. Others argue their motives were just as political as spiritual, uniting trade routes, collecting tribute, expanding control, and now, it seems, they have turned their eyes toward the Ghana kingdom. You find yourself among a group of Ghanaian scholars debating the situation. One leans forward and whispers, "But did they ever really conquer us?" The others pause. It's a fair question. Historians today remain divided on the issue. Some Arabic sources suggest the Almoravids marched directly into Ghana's capital, perhaps around the year 1076, toppling the king and establishing Muslim rule. But archaeological evidence of such an invasion is scant, and later, Ghanaian oral traditions say little, if anything, about a dramatic conquest. It's possible the Almoravid presence was brief, or partial, or entirely overstated by chroniclers who preferred clear victories over complex coexistence. You imagine what it would have looked like. Tall, veiled warriors arriving not as pillagers, but as traders with swords, a tense negotiation, attacks enforced, a mosque expanded. Perhaps that was the conquest, not fire and ash, but influence. Religion braided quietly into law. You walk to the edge of the Muslim quarter of Kumbi Saleh. The streets are active, but cautious. A new banner flies above the main mosque, pale and simple, bearing the Shahada in elegant calligraphy. A scholar greets you kindly, offering dates and explaining that more Qurans are being brought in by caravan. "We are not conquered," he says with a smile. "We are learning." Yet not everyone seems so at ease. In the palace district, shrines have been discreetly covered or relocated. The king, still loyal to traditional practices, has not appeared in public for days. Some say he negotiates quietly with Almoravid emissaries. Others whisper that he contemplates leaving the capital entirely. Near dusk, you pass a gathering at a crossroads. Two griots sit on stones, trading verses like playing cards. One sings a line about a warrior who crossed the desert and forgot his home. The other answers with the tale of a king who outlasted invaders by giving them everything except his name. Their audience laughs softly. The meaning lies between the words. A quirky tale is told that evening by a travelling bard that the Almoravids once tried to buy a camel from a Ghanaian stable, and the animal refused to kneel for its new master. It knew, the bard says with a grin. It knew who its people were. Was it true? Almost certainly not. But truth isn't always what stories are for. You return to the edge of the palace where old symbols have been quietly scratched into the mud walls, behind new ones. It feels like layers of memory pressed into clay. You trace them with your fingers, one round, one sharp, both holding meaning for someone. As night falls, the city exudes a strange calm. Torches flicker beside the mosques. The palace drums do not sound. The air smells faintly of incense and warm metal. You lie beneath a palm frond awning, the stars slowly blinking into view above you. Somewhere, perhaps, the Almoravids prepare to move again. Or perhaps they've already passed through, leaving behind only shadows and signatures in ledgers. You wonder, was this a conquest, or just another chapter? And then you let it go, drifting again into the long, soft night of the Sahel. You awaken to the steady tapping of fingers on clay, a slow, meditative rhythm, like rain on a rooftop or a drum being played by memory. You're sitting beneath a canopy woven from reeds and cowhide, watching a man press symbols into a tablet with practiced ease. Around him, half a dozen children listen intently, their eyes fixed not on the clay but on his lips. This is no school in the way you might imagine it. No scrolls, no desks, no chalk. And yet, what's happening here is just as important. You're in the presence of a memory keeper, a griot of remarkable precision, who preserves the history of the Ghana kingdom, not in books, but in flesh and voice. He sings names the way a sculptor carves stone, gently, deliberately, kings and queens, battles and treaties, births and eclipses. He recites lineages that stretch back a dozen generations, each ancestor tethered to the next like stars in a constellation. The clay tablet in his lap. It's more a prop than a record, a guidepost for the memory, not the memory itself. You marvel as the griot stops mid-line and lets one of the children complete it. They do, flawlessly, their voice rising and falling in that same practiced cadence. You realize that this tradition is not just about remembering, it's about performing, the rhythm, the tone, the breath between words. All must be passed down with perfect fidelity. Griots serve many roles here in the Ghana kingdom. They are historians, yes, but also advisors, musicians, diplomats, and mediators. Their memories are living archives, their songs portable libraries. A single griot may carry the entire history of a royal family in their mind, and it is considered impolite, even dangerous, to contradict them without reason. You're told that when a griot dies, it is as if a library has burned, but the flame doesn't destroy everything, because by then, the next keeper is already singing. And yet, modern historians face a puzzle when trying to map Ghana's past from these oral traditions. Without written texts, how do you verify dates, separate myth from event, or track changes over time? The truth, many now agree, lies in understanding the function of these stories. They aren't just about fact, they are about meaning. A griot's account may say that a king spoke with the trees or walked into the sunset and vanished. We know this isn't literal, but it tells us how people felt about that king, revered, beloved, larger than life, and sometimes That emotional truth is as valuable as the factual one. The griot beside you begins a new chant, the tale of a queen who brokered peace between 3 rival clans by gifting them a single golden bracelet. It's a tale of elegance, patience, and subtle wit. No official record exists of her, but here, in this dusty courtyard, her name lives again. You chuckle quietly at a line that describes her frown as so powerful it could crack a gourd. The children giggle too. Humour, as always, is part of history. Nearby, someone is shaping fresh clay tablets, flat, round, and smooth. You ask what will happen to them. We use them for training. A young griot replies, to trace stories with our fingers. You watch as he presses tiny dots and lines into the surface, not to be fired and preserved, but to be practiced and then wiped away. Memory, here, is meant to be renewed, not stored. One curious tradition stands out when a new griot is initiated. They are blindfolded and must recite their family's entire lineage backward, starting with themselves and ending with the founder. It's said that only then can they carry the past into the future. As the sun sets and the tapping of fingers slows, the courtyard fills with a quiet hum. A few children begin humming the last chant under their breath. The elder griot nods approvingly, and as you lie back on a woven mat, the evening breeze carrying the scent of firewood and millet, you think of all the libraries you've never walked through, the ones that wear sandals and hum under their breath. The stars come out, and somewhere in the dark, a name is whispered, just once, and remembered. You awaken to rhythm, not the rhythm of hooves or drums or chanting, but something else, more intimate, more alive. It is the sound of your own name being played. You open your eyes beneath a canopy of leaves, and before you stands a drummer with a face like weathered wood and hands like flowing water. He nods once, then taps out the rhythm again, and again. You realize it's a pattern, not random, a rhythm you recognize somehow. It is you, here, in this corner of the Ghana kingdom. Names are not always spoken first. Sometimes they are played. You've arrived in a village where drumming isn't just music, it's message, identity, memory, and ceremony. Talking drums, long and hourglass shaped, are carved from hollowed logs and wrapped with animal hide. Skilled drummers can stretch and squeeze the ropes to change the pitch mid-beat, mimicking the tonal rises and falls of human speech, and when they play, the forest listens. You watch as one drummer speaks a greeting across the savannah. Minutes later, a response returns, faint but clear, from a village you cannot see. The entire exchange happens without a word being spoken. It's astonishing. You feel as if the trees themselves have learned to talk. The drummer who woke you laughs softly. He says he's played over 100 different names in his life, each with its own rhythm and meaning. Yours, he adds, is easy. Short name, strong beat. You smile, not entirely sure if he's teasing. This practice, drumming names, messages, warnings, is not a side ritual, it's a system. Entire conversations can be held this way. Births, deaths, visits, ceremonies, all carried across hills and valleys on vibration and air. You sit near the drumming platform as children take turns practicing. One girl gets flustered and plays too quickly, a sentence coming out garbled. The others giggle gently. Now you've just asked for 5 chickens and no shoes. Someone jokes. She rolls her eyes and starts over. Anthropologists studying these traditions have long marveled at their complexity. In tonal languages like those spoken in Ghana and much of West Africa, the pitch of a word carries meaning. Drums, then, mimic not just rhythm but intonation. It's not simple, it's symphonic. And yet, many colonial observers misunderstood what they saw, dismissing drum languages as primitive noise or novelty. Only later would scholars realize they had missed a deeply sophisticated system of social communication. Some debates remain. Were the Ghanaian talking drums standardized across regions, or did every community have its own dialect? Did messages travel hundreds of miles by relay, or just a few hills away? The records are partial, but the practice, or its echoes, endure. You spend the afternoon watching a naming ceremony. A newborn is wrapped in patterned cloth, brought forward beneath a sacred tree, and introduced to the ancestors with a drum call. The pattern played is not just a name, it is a blessing, a protection, a musical fingerprint that may outlive even the child. A quirky local saying floats through the crowd. If you forget your name, wait for the drum. It's a joke, but only just. For some, names are first learned through rhythm before they're ever spoken aloud. As dusk settles, the drumming shifts. No longer urgent or declarative, it becomes soft, echoing, like wind on hollow wood. Children curl beside their mothers. The elders sway in time. And the drummer who first greeted you now plays something slower. Not a name, not a message, just comfort. You lie back, listening to the beat carry into the trees, unsure whether it's calling someone home or simply marking the close of another day. The stars blink above you like soft percussion in the sky. And as your thoughts begin to drift, you realize in a land where words can be played, where memory walks and names have rhythm, silence is never empty. It is just another beat, waiting its turn. The drummer pauses, one final note, and sleep begins. You awaken in the pre-dawn grey, the air sharp with salt. Not ocean salt, no waves crash here, but something drier, more ancient. You stand at the edge of a caravan stop where slabs of white shimmer like snowbanks in the rising light. This is salt from Tagaza, carried across hundreds of miles of desert on camelback, worth its weight in gold, literally. Here in the Ghana Kingdom, salt is not just seasoning, it is wealth. It preserves meat, sustains caravans, and keeps people alive during the dry months when thirst grows sharp and food spoils quickly. And because the Sahel produces little of its own, this precious rock is imported from the desert's cruelest corners, and it does not arrive easily. You watch as a caravan begins to unload. Each camel bears slabs of salt, some nearly as long as your arm, wrapped in leather and bound with cord. Men grunt as they shift the weight onto makeshift sleds. Their faces are cracked with dust, their robes stiff with dried sweat. They've travelled weeks across emptiness to bring this treasure here. A young boy hands you a shard to taste. It's rough, bitter, and almost sweet in the aftertaste. You blink at the strength of it. He nods solemnly. That's good salt, he says. Desert kind. You walk with one of the traders to a nearby weighing station, a flat rock shaded by a hide canopy. There, salt is exchanged for gold dust, carefully, respectfully. The scales are made of wood and copper, counterbalanced with stones known and trusted by all involved. Salt is cut into manageable pieces. Dust is spooned in with cowrie shells. You're told of a time when salt was so valuable it was used in place of coin, and in some cases taxed even more heavily than gold. You laugh, at first, until you realize the logic. You can't eat gold, you can't pack wounds with it. In this kingdom, wealth doesn't just shine, it sustains. Later, you sit beside a fire where two traders share stories. One claims he once saw a slab of salt carved with Arabic script, a gift to a desert chief. Another swears that, in his youth, he saw a man propose to his bride with 3 blocks of salt instead of gold. She said yes before he finished speaking. He chuckles. Historians often marvel at this economy of opposites: gold flowing north, salt flowing south. The Ghana king sat perfectly between them, not miners, not herders, but brokers of value. They taxed both goods, managed their movement, and maintained the peace needed for caravans to cross safely. In doing so, they made themselves indispensable, and yet, questions remain. How exactly did the Tagaza salt mines operate during Ghana's peak? Were slaves used in the digging, as some sources suggest were miners permanently stationed, or did they rotate? The record is cloudy, shaped more by oral tales to fragments than firm data. The truth, like the salt itself, often crumbles when held too tightly. By afternoon, the salt has been moved into storage huts, thick-walled, cool, guarded carefully. You sit with a woman who oversees one such hut. She jokes that salt makes people forget their manners. Even the nicest man becomes a hawk when the salt slab is cracked, she says, eyes twinkling. She offers you food, roasted yam with salt sprinkled by hand. You taste it, simple, hearty, unforgettable. You realize you've never truly tasted salt before now. As the sun dips low, casting golden light across the white mounds, the air cools and the traders stretch out to rest. Camels are watered, fires are lit. Salt dust settles gently into the cracks between stones, like snowflakes that never melt. You lie back on your sleeping mat, the taste of the desert still on your tongue, the knowledge of its value heavier in your heart, and you think, in a land made golden by trade, it was salt that saved lives, not shiny, not soft, but solid, enduring, essential. You awaken to the trickling sound of water, a gentle rhythm far more precious than gold. Around you, the air feels different, moister, cooler, touched by the breath of a nearby river. You're no longer in the heart of Kumbi Saleh, nor among the caravans of the trade road. You've drifted to the kingdom's edge, where geography begins to shift, and with it, perhaps, the future of Ghana itself. You sit beside a riverbank that curves through scrub and savanna, its water slow and shallow this time of year, but steady. Women wash clothes nearby, slapping fabric against smooth stones. A boy floats a carved gourd downstream, chasing it barefoot along the bank. A fisherman balances on one leg in a narrow canoe, casting his net like a dancer unfurling a tapestry. It seems eternal, the river, the rhythm, the life it supports, but the elders say otherwise. You speak with a local chief, whose family has lived by this river for generations. He gestures toward a dry channel nearby, half swallowed by grass. It used to run there, he says, almost absently. Before the bend changed, before the rains shifted, his words, like the current, carry weight. Over time, the flow of water changes, a little here, a little there. But in a kingdom so dependent on movement, of trade, of people, of life, a change in the rivers can become a change in everything. Some scholars have long speculated that the gradual shift of Ghana's rivers contributed to the decline of its central cities. As waterways migrated, as wells dried or relocated, The economic heart of the kingdom may have begun to falter. Towns dependent on river traffic found themselves stranded. Fields once fertile grew brittle. New centres of power, like those to the south, began to rise. But there is no singular moment of collapse. Ghana's fading was not thunderous. It was slow, like erosion, and water, ever the patient sculptor, played its part. You walk with a local guide to an old settlement, now abandoned. Mud brick foundations remain, half swallowed by thorns and dry grass. A well, once deep and beloved, lies empty. The air is quiet, save for birds nesting in the broken walls. In the centre of the ruins stands a curious monument, a single carved post, weathered but still upright. At its base are stone bowls, now filled with leaves and insects. A shrine, perhaps, or a marker. You touch it, and the surface flakes slightly under your fingers. The guide tells you a tale. Once, long ago, the river grew jealous of a king who loved his gold more than the rains, so it changed its course to punish him, slipping silently away in the night. In the morning, the king found his fields dry and his riches useless. He followed the river, but it never spoke to him again. A tale, of course, but one that lingers. You return to the banks of the river that still flows, joining a group of children skipping stones across its surface. One girl shows you her technique: flat stone, low angle, flick of the wrist. You try. It plops once, then sinks. She shakes her head and hands you a better stone. You laugh and try again. Nearby, an elder collects reeds for weaving. He hums a tune older than the town itself. You ask him what it means. He replies, "It's the sound of the river when it's thinking." A quirky belief persists in this region that rivers can remember where they've been. If you sing the right song at the right bend, they might return. Some families still leave offerings at forgotten riverbeds, millet, gourds, small mirrors, in hopes that the water might one day find them again. As twilight descends, you rest by the water's edge. The river glows in the fading light, a slow-moving mirror reflecting fireflies and distant stars. You wonder, if the river had never shifted, would Ghana's story as different? But nature, like history, does not answer. It only moves on. You close your eyes to the hush of lapping water, the faint scent of damp clay, the slow, unseen dance of rivers beneath the soil. And somewhere in the dark, the kingdom listens. You awaken to a stillness that feels new. Familiar rhythms are changing. The drums beat slower in Kumbi Saleh. Caravans pass through with less ceremony. And the gold, once so tightly woven into every corner of Ghana, is beginning to flow in new directions. Not north, not west, but southeast. Something is stirring there. Something young, rising, and confident. You feel it in the air like a shift in the wind. The Mali kingdom is coming. You're seated at a crossroads this morning, watching traders rest beneath acacia trees. Some speak of Kumbi as a place their fathers once praised, full of gold, justice, and order. But others, younger, speak of Niani, of rivers flowing deep and wide, of kings who listen closely and ride with purpose. The name Sundiata is mentioned in hushed tones, not yet legend, but something close to it. He is not a king yet, one traveller says, but he will be. The Ghana kingdom is not gone, not yet, but its centre of gravity is shifting, slowly, subtly, almost respectfully. Mali is not tearing the crown away, it's simply placing one of its own on the table. You journey along a stretch of river where new villages have risen. They are not fortified, not aggressive. but they hum with energy. A new market is being built. Long rows of stalls aligned with the sun's movement, shaded walkways, communal grain stores. The design is different from those in Ghana's interior. Wider, wetter, greener. A woman selling fish wrapped in leaves gestures for you to try one. It's rich, smoky, cooked with something tangy. You ask about the recipe. She laughs and says, Mali cooking. You'll get used to it. There's no bitterness in her tone, just pride. You pass a group of musicians rehearsing beneath a mango tree. Their balafon is larger, deeper. One carries a kora, a new sound, stringed and graceful, threading melody through the percussion. When they play, even the birds pause. Among the elders, however, there is a sense of watching, not resistance, but reflection. One man, seated on a carved stool, points to the horizon and says, "That's where the stories are heading now." He doesn't seem sad, just aware. Historians often struggle with this transition from Ghana to Mali. There is no singular battle, no dramatic collapse, just a rebalancing. Some believe Ghana was already weakening, strained by shifting trade routes, environmental changes and internal rivalries when Mali rose to prominence. Others suggest Mali grew quietly in Ghana's shadow until it was ready to step into the light. The details, as always, blur at the edges. What's clear is that something profound was happening. Gold still flowed, trade still moved, but the whispers no longer centered on Kumbi Saleh. They drifted toward the savannas of Mali. You rest in a courtyard where two scribes, one Soninka, one Mandinka, share tea and scrolls. They discuss trade policies, map routes with sticks in the dust, and trade gentle jabs about who tells better stories. Their conversation is playful, but underpinned by something deeper, a handover not of power, but of purpose. A quirky story reaches your ears from a caravan leader. He claims that when Mali's first royal envoys arrived in Ghana, they brought a giraffe, a drum, and a bowl of honey. The giraffe, they said, symbolized vision, the drum, memory, the honey well. That was simply to make friends. You chuckle, unsure if it's a parable or a prank. Either way, it fits. As the sun lowers, casting golden bands across the grasslands, you watch young traders pack goods bound not for Morocco, but for emerging centres further south and east. The maps are redrawing themselves in real time. Lines shift, voices change, and history, ever fluid, flows with them. You lie down near a tamarind tree where elders whisper the names of kings past and kings yet to come. One of them says, "Gold always finds a new river." You're not sure if it's a proverb or prophecy. And so you rest, knowing that though the Ghana kingdom fades gently into the dusk, its echoes will shape the empire rising in its wake. You sleep beneath stars that once shone on Kaya Maghan, now casting their light on Sundiata's Pa. You awaken to silence, not the kind that weighs heavy or frightens, but the kind that settles, like dust, like memory, the kind of quiet that follows long stories and longer days. You're standing once more near Kumbi Saleh, or what remains of it. And though much has faded, the breeze still knows its name. The structures are mostly ruins now, half walls, sunken courtyards, broken pots buried in grass, but the layout remains. You can trace the outline of old homes, the market square, the king's compound, even the dual town border, once so clearly defined, still whispers its purpose in the pattern of stones. You pass an old well, choked with weeds, but still faintly damp at the bottom. A boy throws a pebble in, listening for the splash. He says his grandfather told him the well once overflowed with riches. Now it gives just enough for goats, and yet people are here. A woman hangs laundry across 2 standing pillars. A farmer tills the nearby fields. Children race in and out of crumbling passageways, pretending to be kings, griots, traders, their games stitched from what remains. The Ghana kingdom is gone, but it isn't lost. You visit a quiet shrine hidden under a baobab tree. Someone has left a gold-coloured bead, a piece of dried fruit, and a scrap of dyed cloth. A prayer is etched into the bark in 2 languages, Soninka and Arabic. You run your fingers over the letters, unsure where one script ends and the other begins. The stories of Ghana haven't ended. They've become echoes, inside songs, across rivers, in the customs of villages that no longer call themselves kingdoms, but still remember how to greet the gold in the earth. You hear one last tale from an old man sharpening a tool by lantern light. He says that the final king of Ghana, whose name is long forgotten, didn't weep when the last caravan left. He simply walked out one morning, took a bowl of water, and poured it slowly into the sand. When asked why, he said, "Even gold returns to the ground." No one's sure if that story is true, but no one questions it either. Historians still debate the final moment of Ghana's fall. Some say it happened in a particular year. Others argue it was a slow ebb, not a collapse. A shift in power, in place, in imagination. But what's left is no less real for being unfinished. You lie down beside the old city wall, now overtaken by moss and lichen. The moon glows above you, casting soft light on stone and shadow. Around you, crickets sing in a rhythm that feels almost familiar, like the talking drums, like names long remembered. And as the night deepens, you drift. You're still now. Your breathing is slow. Your eyes are heavy. You've walked through a kingdom that lived not by conquest, but by connection through trade, silence, ritual, rhythm. A land where gold was not merely mined, but carried, weighed, poured in prayerful handfuls beside wells and trees. You've met kings who ruled with layers of silence, women who traded with dignity and wit, blacksmiths who whispered to fire, drummers who could speak your name through wood and hide, and griots who stored whole centuries in their chests, never needing a scroll to remember. You followed the rise and fall of a kingdom made not of walls, but of paths, invisible routes traced through savanna and sand. The Ghana kingdom lived not only in cities, but in the minds of those who trusted the journey. The camel's step, the river's bend, the drum's call, the child's whispered blessing. Even as rivers shifted and kingdoms changed, the spirit of Ghana never vanished. It walked quietly into the next empire, the next song, the next story passed from mouth to ear, and now, as your body softens and your thoughts grow lighter, you carry those stories too, gently, silently. Let the images linger behind your eyelids, the quiet court, the shimmering dust, the laughter beneath neem trees. Let the rhythm of Ghana, its hush, its hum, its history, lull you into dreams. The past is not far. It's folded softly beneath you, like a woven mat, like a warm breeze, like memory made of gold and wind. Sleep, dear traveller, sleep